Hi, this is the fourth video in our series on disorders of childhood and adolescence. And in this video today, we're going to be looking at conduct disorder. And conduct disorder is very different from what we saw with oppositional defiant disorder. The oppositional defiant disorder, you're going to see a kid who's upset, who is maybe having tantrums that are age inappropriate, yelling, maybe throwing things, not wanting to do what you want them to do, getting into trouble at school for poor attendance, quarreling with adults. Very different from what you're going to see in conduct disorder, which is a lot more disturbing and a lot less upset. So with conduct disorder, we often see somebody who's really a bully. Bullying, threatening, intimidating others, physical fights, harm to others with or without a weapon, and anything that's harmful could be a weapon. Here we see a bat, brick, broken bottle, knife, gun, whatever. Physically cruel to people and or animals, and particularly small children or anybody that's smaller or weaker than them. In typical bully fashion, right? Has stolen while confronting a victim. So that's, mugging or extortion, armed robbery, or forced somebody into sexual activity. So I hope you get a strong sense of how different this is from the child with oppositional defiant disorder, who's upset and maybe in your face and maybe defiant. This is very different. This is a lot more disturbing, and this is great harm to others. And this, by the way, this person might not be in trouble themselves. They only get in trouble if they're caught. So, destruction of property. So fire setting or other than fire setting, destruction of property. Excuse me. Deceitfulness or theft, broken into somebody else's house, building, or car, lies to obtain goods or favors. So this person could be a bit of a con, manipulative, able to figure you out and figure out how to get something out of you, probably by lying, and stolen things of value, and serious violation of rules. Staying out at night before being 13 years old, run away from home overnight at least twice. Now, the violation of rules could go with oppositional defiant disorder, but remember, this is a whole group of signs and symptoms, not just staying out late or running away from home or school, because those you can see in a lot of different settings for children. But this is along with the bullying, stealing, property destruction, and deceitfulness, lying, or conning. This is really serious. And in particular, we don't diagnose conduct disorder in adults. Once a kid turns 18, and if they continue with the same syndrome, we would probably consider that antisocial personality disorder. And we'll talk about that when we get to personality disorders. It used to be called sociopathy, or it could be psychopathy. So when you think of people like, serial killers and people like that, often when you look back at their histories, you see childhood pattern of conduct disorder. And if you see harm to animals or torture of animals and fire setting, typically you're looking at some real problems up ahead, or at the time you're looking at some very serious trouble, very troubled kid. And these specifiers are important. I want to skip down to lack of remorse or guilt. It's one thing to do something that violates your own moral code and then to regret it. I think I mean, we do that sometimes, right? I get mad and I say something that I regret later. It's not that I didn't mean to be mean. I meant it at the time. Otherwise I wouldn't have said it, right? So I say something mean, but then later I regret it because I have guilt and remorse. Here, and often with conduct disorder, you see lack of remorse or guilt. And, we're not talking about the kind of remorse that somebody feels when they're facing punishment. We're talking about remorse that comes from a sense of guilt. And guilt is how our conscience punishes us, basically, right? So when we do something that violates our own morality, our conscience punishes us with guilt, and we can't sleep at night, and we feel bad, and, guilt. Excuse me. The other disturbing specifier is callousness or lack of empathy. And lack of empathy means a disregard for the feeling of others. And not just disregard, but often an inability to put oneself in somebody else's shoes, or not caring. Maybe able to put themselves in somebody else's shoes and then still don't care. That's really disturbing. And it's hard to teach. It's hard to change in people. It often doesn't go away as an adult. So these are very serious specifiers for a disorder that could potentially lead to some really bad consequences. Conduct disorder is more frequently seen in kids who were abused, but it is also occasionally seen in kids who seem to have supportive and loving parents. Now, you never know. People have skeletons in the closet, so you never know. There's a possibility that the family wasn't what they seemed. But now, the other thing is, and we have to remember this too, of course there are people who are horribly abused as children who grow up to want to change the world and who grow up to be very kind and empathetic and even more sensitive to the feelings and needs of others. So child abuse does not lead to conduct disorder. There is somewhat of a correlation between being treated poorly and treating others poorly. That's about what we're seeing here. But people can have wonderful childhoods and come out unempathetic, bullying, and unkind. And and really violate others, and people can have horrible childhoods and, of course, form wonderful personalities. Not that they're unscarred. I'm not saying unscarred. I'm just saying empathetic and sensitive as well. Okay, I'm going to end this video on conduct disorder here.